So the X58 platform we saw in the last video is nice and all with its triple channel memory, but what can be better than triple channel? Quadruple channel! Last week we looked into an X58 system and we tried out two different CPUs, a 4-core i7-920 and a 6-core Xeon X5670. Of course, the Xeon with a bit more clock and more cores was a definite winner in the aging platform. But what happens if we compare a Gen 1 6-core Xeon with a Gen 2 Core i7 with only 4 cores? Are the 2 extra cores enough to be faster than the newest CPU with a higher IPC? I don't know, but let's find out. The X79 chipset was released in 2011 as a successor to the X58. As a product geared for enthusiasts, it needed something to make it pop out from the other chipsets. So keeping with the memory bandwidth trend, it offered even more, going from triple channel memory in the prior generation to quadruple channel. Although this allowed for more bandwidth with RAM memory, it did so with the same DDR3 used by the prior generation, although it's able to handle higher frequencies. For the advancements on the CPU department, mainly it was the AVX instruction set. This particular CPU, the i7-3820, was the Intel i7 with the lowest clock released for the X79 chipset. Of course, it was also the cheapest CPU available for the platform, and that makes it all the more interesting with an original suggested price of $305 US. It runs at 3.6 GHz with a turbo boost of 3.8. In contrast, the Xeon we tested on the X58 platform clocked at 2.92 GHz with a turbo boost of 3.33. So quite a big gain in clock speeds for the i7-3820. The prior gen Xeon also had more cache with 12 MB versus 10 MB in our Sandy Bridge E i7. So really, I'm not sure where this is taking us, and I do want the 4-core i7-3820 to come out on top with its quad-channel RAM elegance, but I think the X5670 with its 6 cores will be quite a challenge to beat. The motherboard we're using is the Asus P9X79 PRO. Seeing as we're into the enthusiast segment, this motherboard is full of features. It's got 4 PCI Express slots that can work as 2 in 16X or 1 at 16X, while the rest at 8X, plus 2 PCIe 1X slots. It's got 8 SATA ports, 10 external USB ports, plus some more internal. I haven't looked into the sound, but by the hardware it seems decent. It's got quite a few capacitors with the audio chip. Usually that means the sound is clean. For us tinkerers, the best thing about these enthusiast motherboards is the power and reset button on board, and as a bonus there's a display for error codes. We're using 4 sticks of RAM to be able to use the quad channel implementation, but we're going above what the other system had with 16 GB instead of 12. I don't think this should be accounted for because on the other system we never even reached 10 GB of usage while running the benchmarks. But it's something, and more noticeable than that, is that this platform actually allows us to run the RAM at 1600 MHz, while the last one was capping at 1333. While it could be maybe overclocked to 1600 MHz, I wasn't able to get it there. You guys tired of numbers yet? Geez, let's get into the performance of this thing. I decided to run the same games at the same settings I did on the X58 so we can get a comparison chart and get to a conclusion of what is gained with the step up from Bloomfield to Esmere and finally Sandy Bridge E. I decided to use Shadowplay here. It taxes the system next to nothing and it's very practical. The CPU is well capable of Full HD gaming, but for consistency and to be able to compare with the X58 platform, the benchmarks were all set at 1680 by 1050. In Tomb Raider 2013, the FPS I was getting for the two CPUs on the X58 platform was already pretty high. The i7-3820 added to what the Xeon 5670 could do by a little bit, about a 10% performance increase. So for the second video in a row, Tomb Raider was an outlier for the right correlation of CPU performance and frame rate. In Deus Ex Mankind Divided, the i7-3820 performed within margin of error of the Xeon. Although there was little to no gain, it's still an impressive feat considering the older CPU has 2 extra cores. In Batman Arkham Knight, the i7-3820 performed 5 to 10% faster in the lower resolution of 1280 by 800 and in 1680 by 1050 with higher settings there was no improvement, probably due to video card limitations. In Borderlands 3, again we see a 10% gain on the lower resolution, and on the higher we're probably GPU limited and the numbers are within margin of error. On the Borderlands benchmark, the results are max FPS and frame time, and we did see some improvement in 1280 by 800, but not a significant one in the high resolution with high settings. Now for the synthetics, in Geekbench for the single core performance, the older CPUs were manhandled by the Sandy Bridge E, while in multi-core performance, the i7-3820 performed almost the same as the 6-core Xeon. In Cinebench's multi-core test, there's a plot twist. The Xeon still has the performance crown here by a bit more than 10%. I guess for rendering, the 6-core Westmere Xeon is still superior than the 4-core Sandy Bridge E CPU. I can only imagine what a 6 to 8 core CPU on the X79 platform can do. Eventually I'll get one in the lab to run tests and we can revisit this. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you're into this kind of thing, check out this video where we looked at some benchmark results and a couple of CPU options for the X58 platform.